There are moments in life when you sit in silence, looking at the work in front of you, and you know exactly what needs to be done, yet you cannot move. You tell yourself, "I'll start in 5 minutes." Then 5 minutes pass, and you're still sitting there. It's not laziness, not a lack of intelligence, but something quieter and heavier. It's procrastination, the invisible fog that wraps around our intentions and makes time slip away. When you begin to notice this pattern, don't fight it with anger. Don't shout at yourself or declare that you are weak. Instead, breathe. Procrastination is not a sign that you are broken, it's a signal that part of you is afraid. It may be fear of failing, fear of doing well and being seen, or fear of discovering that your best efforts still might not be enough. Beneath every delay, there is emotion. To understand procrastination, you must begin by listening to yourself without judgment. Ask quietly, what am I protecting myself from by waiting? Sometimes the answer is uncertainty. Sometimes it's exhaustion. Sometimes it's simply that the task before you feels too large, and your mind is searching for safety and distraction. The first step to ending procrastination is compassion, the willingness to understand rather than attack yourself. Think of your mind as a friend who hesitates at the edge of a deep pool. You could yell at that friend to jump, but they will only resist more. Or you could walk beside them, place your hand on their shoulder, and say, "I'm here. Let's take this one step at a time." The moment you treat your hesitation with kindness, it begins to soften. There is a strange comfort in delay. The moment we postpone, the weight of doing disappears for a while. The mind whispers, "See? You feel better now." But the relief is short, and the guilt that follows is heavier than before. Still, we repeat it, because it feels easier than facing the unknown. The truth is, procrastination is not about time management, it's about emotion management. The calendar cannot save you until your heart feels safe enough to act. When you wake up tomorrow and notice the pull to delay again, pause. Feel that space between intention and action. That's where your power lies. You can gently ask yourself, what small thing can I do right now? Not the whole project, not the perfect result, just a single breath of progress. Sometimes the smallest motion breaks the thickest fog. The journey out of procrastination begins with presence. Bring your attention back from the future where everything feels impossible. Bring it away from the past where you judge yourself for every lost hour. Let it rest in this moment, where you are breathing. From this stillness, a tiny spark of clarity begins to appear. You realize that doing something small now is kinder than carrying the heavy thought of it all day. Many people wait for motivation to arrive, believing that one day they will suddenly feel ready. But readiness is not a visitor, it is built through movement. When you begin, even gently, energy starts to return. You do not have to feel inspired to begin. You begin, and that is what creates inspiration. Imagine you are walking through a forest. The path ahead is covered with fog. You cannot see the end, only the next few steps. The procrastinating mind says, "I'll wait until the fog clears." But the wise heart knows, the fog only lifts as you walk. Each small step reveals the next. Waiting for clarity before you start is the surest way to stay lost. You may feel guilty for all the times you postponed your dreams. Let that go. Every delay was part of your learning. You were gathering courage quietly, even when you thought you were wasting time. What matters is that you are awake now, aware of the habit, ready to move differently. The next time you catch yourself scrolling endlessly, cleaning the desk again, or finding one more video to watch before you begin, smile gently. That awareness itself is progress. You are no longer lost in automatic avoidance, you are noticing. And the act of noticing gives you a choice. Take a deep breath. Feel the weight of expectation on your shoulders, and imagine setting it down. You do not need to conquer the world today. You only need to return to this present moment and take one honest step. The path out of procrastination is not paved with force, it's built with understanding. Each time you act, even in a small way, you prove to yourself that movement is safe. You remind the nervous system that action does not equal danger. Slowly, the pattern begins to shift. You start trusting yourself again, and the voice of delay loses its grip. It's a quiet transformation, not a dramatic one. There won't be fireworks or applause, just calm confidence building silently inside you. You begin to see that progress is not made in leaps but in steady, patient breaths. And maybe one evening, you'll look up from your work and realize you've been focused for an hour, lost in the flow, no longer fighting yourself. That's the moment when you'll understand that procrastination was never your enemy, it was your teacher, showing you where you needed gentleness, where you needed rest, where you needed faith. You start to notice that the world around you hasn't changed much, the same sounds, the same light, the same tasks waiting on your desk, yet something small inside you feels different. There's a quiet willingness to meet the moment instead of running from it. You begin to realize that the power to act was never lost, it was only covered by layers of fear and expectation. When you sit down again, the mind still whispers, "Not yet." That's fine. You smile at the voice as you would at an old habit. You no longer argue with it. You simply begin, even if your beginning is imperfect. This is how transformation sneaks in, not with declarations but with quiet repetition. As you keep showing up, you learn to trust the process of starting. You stop demanding a guarantee that everything will work out. You simply trust that showing up itself is worthwhile. In this trust, procrastination loses its hold because it thrives on the need for certainty. When you accept uncertainty, delay no longer has a reason to exist. There's also forgiveness here, gentle, necessary forgiveness for the hours lost, for the projects left undone, for the versions of yourself that were afraid to move. You forgive not to forget but to clear the path for what's next. Carrying guilt into every new effort is like trying to plant seeds in soil already full of stones. Letting go makes room for growth. With practice, you notice the small rituals that help you begin. A sip of water. A slow breath. The feel of pen against paper or fingers on a keyboard. These become quiet signals to your brain that it's safe to start. You begin to appreciate the beauty of beginning itself. Every time you cross that line between thought and action, you rewrite your story. When the urge to delay returns, and it will, you meet it with curiosity rather than criticism. You ask, what is this moment trying to tell me? Sometimes it tells you that you are tired, and the kindest thing is to rest. Sometimes it tells you that you are afraid, and the kindest thing is to start anyway. Either way, you respond with awareness, not avoidance. The days blend softly together, and you start noticing progress in places you never looked before. The satisfaction isn't loud, but it's steady. You go to sleep feeling lighter, not because you finished everything, but because you stayed honest with yourself. That honesty grows into confidence. Not the bold, loud kind that needs to be seen, but the quiet kind that lives in your chest. It whispers, "You can trust yourself to begin." With that trust, the distance between idea and action becomes shorter. Life feels less like a battle and more like a rhythm. You see that procrastination isn't a monster waiting to devour your time, it's simply a signal that part of you is uncertain. When you learn to listen, the signal fades. You don't destroy procrastination, you outgrow it. And even when it visits again, as it sometimes will, you'll know it's only a reminder to pause, breathe, and return to yourself. There's nothing to fear in that. The work you avoided becomes the place where you practice presence. Each task, no matter how small, becomes an opportunity to meet yourself with patience. The more you live this way, the more you realize that life itself is not about constant doing. It's about learning to move from a place of clarity instead of compulsion. The mind that once ran in circles now walks steadily, and each step feels lighter than the one before. There comes a point when the act of beginning no longer feels like a battle but a gentle decision. You sit down, take a breath, and allow yourself to be here. The noise in your mind fades, not because it disappears, but because you have learned to listen without being carried away. In this stillness, you realize that procrastination was never just about avoiding tasks. It was about avoiding the feelings that came with them: fear, uncertainty, self-doubt, the quiet question of whether you are enough. When you stop running, you give those feelings a chance to speak. At first, they whisper through restlessness. Then they soften into understanding. You begin to see that the things you avoided were simply reflections of what you believed about yourself. You delayed not because you were lazy but because you were protecting yourself from disappointment. Yet protection became a cage. You don't have to break the cage by force. You just open the door, step out, and keep walking. The world outside is still imperfect, but it's real. Every time you take action, even the smallest one, you step closer to freedom. Each morning becomes a quiet invitation. The light arrives before you open your eyes, touching the corners of your room, reminding you that time still moves forward no matter how long you wait. You lie there for a moment, feeling the slow rise of your breath. There's a calm truth in that rhythm. Life doesn't ask you to be faster, it only asks you to keep breathing, to keep beginning. You sit up, and the world is still simple. The mind starts its usual chatter, the list of things undone, the weight of what must be done next. But now you listen differently. You don't rush to silence the noise, you let it pass like waves breaking on the shore. The noise fades because you no longer chase it. You begin to sense that procrastination was never a failure of willpower. It was a message that you were disconnected from yourself. You were running on borrowed energy, trying to meet expectations that weren't entirely your own. Every delay was your body whispering, "Wait, I need a moment to remember why this matters." When you reconnect with that reason, even a small one, the energy to begin returns naturally. There is no need to force discipline when purpose is present. When you truly care about what you're doing, you don't need to fight yourself to do it. The struggle fades into focus, like fog lifting from a quiet road. You stop working against your mind and start working with it. You treat yourself as a partner rather than a problem. You notice that time feels different now. Before, it used to feel heavy, like something pressing down on you. Now it feels open, like a field you can walk through at your own pace. You no longer measure hours in guilt but in presence. Even if you only work for a short while, it feels whole, because you are truly there. There will still be days when the weight returns, when your body feels slow and your mind foggy. On those days, you practice gentleness. You sit with yourself the way you would sit with a friend who's tired. You offer patience, not pressure. You remind yourself that growth is not a straight line, it's a quiet spiral that returns to the same lessons until they sink deep enough to stay. When the mind whispers, "You're wasting time," you answer softly, "I'm learning." Because even in stillness, you are learning. You are learning how to hear yourself, how to balance effort and ease, how to trust the quiet unfolding of progress. You start to see that the opposite of procrastination isn't productivity, it's presence. Productivity is about quantity, presence is about quality. One moment of true presence can change the shape of an entire day. When you are present, work stops feeling like punishment. It becomes an expression of care, care for your life, for your time, for the small part of the world you touch. As days pass, you notice how many small decisions shape your rhythm. The decision to begin, the decision to pause, the decision to return. Each one adds up. You realize that the future isn't built by grand gestures but by these small, honest choices repeated quietly. Even the act of writing a single line, or cleaning one corner, or finishing one simple task carries a weight of meaning. It's a way of saying, "I'm here. I'm participating in my own life." And that simple participation brings peace. At night, when you reflect, you no longer count what's left undone. You notice what you showed up for. You feel gratitude not for perfection, but for effort. The guilt that once followed you begins to dissolve, replaced by a softer voice that says, "You did what you could, and that is enough." The truth is, you will never completely escape procrastination. It will visit again in different forms. But now, when it comes, you will recognize it as an old visitor, no longer a stranger. You will know how to sit with it, listen to it, and guide it gently back into motion. You learn to trust the natural flow of doing and resting, of pausing and continuing. Life becomes less about forcing and more about following. The same energy that once pulled you away from your work now becomes the energy that teaches you when to rest and when to move. And with each day lived this way, your mind grows quieter, your focus steadier, and your heart lighter. You no longer chase motivation, you live it. You smile, softly, realizing that all along you were never waiting for the perfect moment to begin. You were waiting to meet yourself with kindness. And now that you have, you finally understand, beginning was never the hard part. It was believing that you could.